Good evening, guys. It's Saturday night. It's Pontificating with Pete on Revolutionary Change. I hope you're all doing well because we got a lot of fun stuff to get to tonight. I want to start off by saying shout out to Jen. I just had dinner a little while ago and I made your potatoes, a couple of fingerling potatoes from the farm. Roasted those bad boys up, turned them into fries, if you will. They were great. So anytime you can have legitimate organic food that isn't pesticided to death and is nice and fresh, it's incredible how tasty it is. So hopefully we, as a society, get back to more localized farming, community gardens, habits that have been around for thousands upon thousands of years. We've just kind of lost sight of the importance of having that simply because we've evolved technologically, perhaps socially in some respects, but overall we've regressed. And so now it's important to get back to those habits. Guys, if you haven't smashed that like button yet, please do. We're already off to a good start. We're at 200 live viewers already. So let's see if we can have a big night tonight. Smash that like button because, like I said, we got a lot of important stories to get to. Yes, there's some pontificating and some fun. We're going to let little Ben and David, his doppelganger, have it. There'll be some fun there. But I want to start off with, and forgive me because obviously I run a very tight ship, a very busy schedule. I finally had an opportunity to write a Substack for the first time in a while. So tonight, I did write, or yesterday, I should say, I was really caught up in the story that happened in this town called Tal in the West Bank and what had transpired there. And so there's a lot of people that ask us constantly, what do we do? What is the solution? How can we help the Palestinians? What is it that could make the difference in their lives when it seems like there's so little, if anything, that we could do from afar? And it's true. There is very little that we can do from afar. But what we can do is learn from history in how other groups were able to find their way out of these treacherously deadly situations. And although this may not be the silver bullet that we're all looking for, no pun intended, there is something to be said for what actually transpired the other day. So here is the Substack, and I'm going to read it. Let's see if it appropriates. There we go. All right. Colin, if you would, please. Palestinians finally resist the right way. Now, unfortunately, this is an image of one of the young people, I believe he was a teenager, that was assassinated by the Israeli offensive forces, as we like to call them. And the reason this is significant is because I believe many of you have probably seen the footage, and that footage has basically shown, hey, Eric, it is, I guess it's around lunchtime where you are now, something like that. Good to see you, pal. There's a lot of footage going around of what was going on in a handful of these communities. Talbos, or Tal, I believe it's how you pronounce it. And you've seen the footage of dozens of Israelis, or probably people from Brooklyn, if you will, that were descended upon this community in the West Bank to basically steal their homes. So let's go to the story. Over the past 3 years, Israeli soldiers have built a reputation based primarily on cowardice and maliciousness that rivals the worst war criminals in world history. Hence, most of their barbaric actions are perpetrated on those incapable of defending themselves against weapons of war. If that's not enough, the targets of their genocidal ire are most often women and children. So it should come as no surprise that the Israeli government has declared that they will not join the U.S. in any kind of ground war with Iran. The Goyim jokes simply write themselves. Yet the significance of what happened yesterday in the West Bank town of Tal cannot be overstated. While the ambush of what appeared to be dozens of Israeli settlers descending upon this area to overwhelm the citizenry and steal their homes, a moment of true resistance may have changed the course of this genocide. A young Palestinian was one of 4 people murdered by the IDF during the ambush, but not before he killed one Israeli soldier with a gunshot. And finally, it all makes sense. Throughout the post-World War II era, a key element of clandestine military operations aimed at regime change through citizen uprising within a country's borders has been the U.S. providing weapons to the so-called rebels fighting on the side of Western imperial interests. Whether it be the Contras in Nicaragua, Osama bin Laden's Mujahideen in Afghanistan, or rebellion groups in Iran today, the U.S. always arms the side of global conflicts that serve its best economic interests. Palestinians need to arm themselves the way militia groups of yesteryear have, and it will produce immediate beneficial results. For starters, Israelis will think twice about further ambushes in their lives if their lives are truly in danger. They may want the land, but most are not willing to die for it. Palestinians are. In addition, it is the only way to ensure a possible retreat as the end game has always been the Greater Israel Project, in which the eradication of all Palestinians is an acceptable result in this genocidal ideology's eyes. If Israelis start getting clipped left and right, we'll see how committed to this imperialist cause they truly are. It is time we help arm the Palestinians, for if they do not fight with fire, the fire will eventually engulf them completely. Fight back now before it's too late. And so I do believe we have some footage that we can show you from this attempted ambush that took place in this small Palestinian community in the West Bank. And of course, their attempts to overwhelm them. So a breakdown of how the incident and this is from Drop Site News. Shout out to Drop Site News, Ryan Grimm, friend of the show, Julian Andrioni. Breakdown of how the incident in Tal, Nablus, unfolded. The Palestinian man, Farouk Ramadan, initially appears to be trying to protect another Palestinian, likely his brother, when an armed settler hits him in the head with a rifle. As he moves away, he is kicked or struck from behind. Still, he retreats again. Israeli settlers are the surrounding soldiers under whose protection the incursion appears to be taking place, then fire live shots. The sounds of gunshots can be heard clearly in the video. An armed Israeli settler then charges directly at Ramadan, and a fellow Palestinian with a gun raised and pointed at their chest, closing distance between them as gunshots are heard in the background. Ramadan disarms him, takes the rifle, and aims it at the settler, and purportedly shoots him dead. So not only was he apparently not armed, he took the we have to stop calling them settlers. I mean, honestly, they're terrorists. Israelis are terrorists. They're not settlers. They're genocidal terrorists. That's what they are. So let's make sure we get it right. He had the weapon pointed at him, and he managed to disarm him. And rather than just put the weapon down, he said, no, I've had enough. I've had enough. And he killed him. And not a single tear is going to be shed, or it should be anyway. On the sequence visible in the footage, it is clear he is acting in self-defense against an imminent armed threat that the terrorist attacks senior Israeli officials are calling it, of course they are, and using to justify pogroms in Palestinian villages. 5 Palestinians were ultimately killed in the broader settler and Israeli military forces attack in this incident. Dozens more have been wounded and property damage since. All right, you know what? Hold on. You know, our channel suffers from deliberate suppression constantly. So let's not play the clip. If you haven't seen this, go to Drop Site News, check it out. It's kind of hard to see, but you can clearly see him getting shot. Now, the reason why I'm saying that the Palestinians need to be armed is because In years past, and history will likely repeat itself here in this community, for decades and decades, especially after the first Intifada, starting in 1987, mowing the lawn has become a common practice. And if, God forbid, one of the chosen people is killed, well, then they kind of do what they did. I mean, listen, the commonalities between the Nazis and the Zios is very clear cut. One of the most important members of the Third Reich, Reinhard Heydrich, who is considered the perfect specimen of a German, 6'4", strong, handsome. He was killed in a car bomb. And Hitler's response to this was to say, oh, you thought we were killing you before? Now we're really going to kill you. And then they proceeded to basically wipe out entire communities. Now, I could see a situation where, because of the retaliation, something like that could happen, which is why, if there is a will, there is a way. The Palestinians have to be armed. And here's hoping we could do our part to make sure that they are. Now, again, I don't have access to weaponry like that. I can only put the word out into the ether and hope that this starts a trend and gets people to understand that the Palestinians need to protect themselves violently if necessary, beyond that at this point. But I want you all to see just what this chump looked like. Colin, you have the photo, please? See, this is the guy that got gunned down. Now, as you can see, he really looks like he's from that region. If you didn't know any better, you couldn't tell the difference between his skin color and that white automobile standing behind him. I tell you, they're so tough. They're so tough when they don't have to worry about retaliation. This is why you often see them going after women and children. It's a very common practice. But of course, in this instance, you can see that he was not anticipating having his, I mean, again, I can't make out what that automatic weapon is. I'm not a gun expert. I know a little bit about guns, but not enough to say definitively I can look right at it and say that's what that is. But a lot of times I think these guys just get this type of weaponry. They don't know what the fuck they're doing. And so he points this automatic weapon at a bunch of unarmed citizens and manages to have it disarmed, pointed at him. And rather than negotiate, take him hostage, the Palestinian decided, no, I want your blood. And he got it. Now, of course, unsurprisingly, he lost his life. But he is now a martyr. He is a martyr for a greater cause because he decided that I don't know if I'm going to live or die. I know for sure if I kill him, I will die. However, if I do kill him, maybe that might send a message to other members of my brethren to say, this is the only way we're going to get out of this. That's it. There is no other way. They will kill us all if we don't fight back. And the only way to fight back is fire with fire. And we generally are not ones to say that that is the solution to the problem. But in this case, it's the only solution. We have been witnessing the decimation of these people for almost 3 years. We are almost at the 3rd year anniversary in just a couple of months. And yet, when attempts to try to end this come about, do you know what ends up happening? Do you know what they ended up doing? Do you know what happens when you stand up for humanity? Colin, I need the clip from the United Nations, the story from the United Nations. You know, the person who decided to try Netanyahu Milikowski with war crimes, guess what happened to him? He's now out. ICC member states vote to remove Chief Prosecutor Karim Khan. This is the person who tried Netanyahu with war crimes. And guess what? He's now no longer in a position of authority. And this is unprecedented. This never happens. The ICC voted to remove the Global Tribunal's chief prosecutor on Friday, nearly 2 years after sexual misconduct allegations against him first emerged. The court's oversight body announced. Keep in mind, those charges are bogus. They've been thrown out, but who gives a shit? British barrister Karim Khan was accused of sexual misconduct with a female aide, as outlined in the Associated Press in a series of stories, allegations which he has steadfastly denied. By a large majority, the ICC's 125-member, please remove that, 125-member states ousted Khan from his position, the first time a chief prosecutor has ever been removed from office. Ever! Never happened before, but it happened now. The court's oversight body, the Assembly of States Parties, concluded that Khan had committed serious misconduct and serious breach of duty, said Pavi Kokrantha, the body's president. The 56-year-old Khan was temporarily removed from his duties at the ICC in June, pending Friday's vote, after a report by the executive committee of the court's oversight body found he had committed serious misconduct. No evidence, but, their feelings are hurt. According to documents seen by the AP, Khan engaged in a sexual relationship with a woman and tried to prevent her from pursuing her allegations. Khan disputes those findings. Early in the session, a motion brought by Sierra Leone that would have made it harder to oust Khan failed, and diplomats quickly moved forward to vote on removal. And remember, Sierra Leone is one of the poorest countries in the world. So naturally, they're trying to fight for justice, and the more impressive, wealthier countries made sure that he was out. The lengthy and complicated process has pitted human rights advocates, staff, and member states against one another at a time when the court is already facing daunting challenges, including a campaign by the U.S. to dismantle the ICC, which has established to prosecute people responsible for humanity's worst crimes. In a statement last week, Secretary of State Marco Rubio said the U.S. was launching a sweeping campaign to dismantle the threat posed by the ICC to U.S. sovereignty. Rubio said he will pressure member states to withdraw from the institution, sanction organizations that work with the court, and ban staff from traveling to the U.S. Countries that enjoy the benefits of the U.S. security umbrella will be called upon to reject the court's jurisdiction over U.S. citizens. Netanyahu's not a U.S. citizen, last I checked. Although who the hell knows at this point? Hours after the vote, Venezuela announced it would withdraw from the court. Gee, I wonder, I'm just spitballing here, but if Maduro was still in power, do you think Venezuela would be backing away? I doubt it. Venezuela considers the court's actions reflect a demonstrated geographical bias, which has disproportionately concentrated its work on African and Latin American countries to the detriment of the global South. Felix Plasencia, the country's foreign affairs minister, announced in a statement earlier this year, prosecutors at the court announced they were dropping an investigation to whether U.S. sanctions against Venezuela qualified as crimes against humanity, citing a lack of evidence. A separate investigation into possible crimes committed by Venezuelan security forces under former President Nicolas Maduro will continue. Trump's administration already has brought sanctions against Khan and a dozen other ICC staff in retaliation for warrants the court has issued for top Israeli officials, including Netanyahu, over the genocide in Gaza and investigations. You see, it's not a war unless the other side is armed, and in this case, they're not, but they should be. Investigations into U.S. personnel in Afghanistan. Karim believed that by launching a political witch hunt, it's a witch hunt, against Israel and issuing a politically motivated arrest warrant against Netanyahu, the world would ignore the grave sexual misconduct against him. You can't make this up. I mean, this is incredible. But like I said, when you're chosen, you could do whatever you want. Remember, the crimes, you fit the bill depending on who's committing them. And this is from Danny Dannon. You know that shitbag with his thumb up his ass when he's in front of the council all the time? The allegations have become entwined with the court's investigation into the genocide in Gaza. Political considerations have been folded into this, especially as the first time a prosecutor has pursued warrants against a Western ally. Ally my ass. Khan's removal will have no immediate impact on the arrest warrants in 24 of Netanyahu and former defense minister Yoav Gallant for crimes against humanity, which can only be withdrawn by ICC judges. So as you can see, there is no doubt, in my mind anyway, that what you have here is a case of military might, kind of like the Roman Empire, just extending their arms across every reaching corner of the world as they can, and saying you will not come down on this for whatever reason. So when we talk about trying to interlock the U.S. military and the Israeli military, it's already there. But obviously the goal with this pending legislation, which is pretty big, is going to become an eyesore for a lot of people to fully grasp. Because in the end, as we've been saying for a long time, so much of this is kabuki theater. Now, do I think that the masses are ready to make a move and that they've had enough of what Israel represents and what they've done to us? Maybe. But you never know. And I say this hoping that there is the possibility that we could be reaching a breakthrough. Now, do I think it's possible that it will get held up in the Senate? I think it's possible. I'm not saying it's definitely going to happen. We all know that the amount of votes that are needed for the threshold is 60, and Senator Moreno from Ohio has already come out and said that he is not going to support any legislation that includes Section 219, which is the merging of the two militaries. But remember, guys, it's all for show. Very rarely, if anything, does anything happen on the Hill that does not involve full knowledge of how the vote's going to go down before they actually get into the chambers to cast that vote. Very rare. How do we know? Because Marjorie Taylor Greene is still speaking truth to power.
I just want to follow up on a video that I put out explaining the NDAA vote that happened yesterday, explaining the two votes. Every time a bill passes the House floor, it has to cross two hurdles. The first vote is called the rule vote. The second vote is final passage vote. Now, that's super confusing and it's really stupid, but that's the way they do it. We had 7 total Republicans vote no on final passage to the NDAA because of Section 219 and other issues that they didn't like within the bill. We are thankful to them for voting no. However, that was a safe no vote, and let me explain that. There's 2 ways to vote no. There's the safe no vote, which is voting no on a bill when you know it's going to pass, so you don't have to make anybody mad, and you can still vote no because it's going to pass even without your vote. Then there's the courageous no vote, and that is voting no on the rule, the first vote for that bill to cross to final passage. When you vote no on the rule vote, you're voting no against everyone. You're voting no against leadership. You're voting no against the White House. You're taking a hard stand and saying, I am 100% against this bill. I do not want it to pass. There was only one Republican that took the courageous no vote on the rule vote. That was Thomas Massie.
And that is why Thomas Massie and Marjorie Taylor Greene are no longer on Capitol Hill. Well, Massey's there for a little while longer, thankfully. He'll be there for, actually, Massey will be there for another 5 months. 5 months. So there's no telling how much more he might accomplish in the course of that time. And with that being said, let's keep a couple things in mind here. Very important. This is how it's always been done. There is a congressman that I've mentioned a few times, Tim Burchett, out of Knoxville, Tennessee. He's considered one of the decent Republican congressmen. Now, he did not do the standalone vote. He allowed it to proceed. Then he voted no, but they still passed it anyway. So essentially what he's trying to do is have his cake and eat it too. He's trying to show that he is genuinely not in favor of what is going on regarding the merging of the militaries between Israel and the U.S., And at the same time, he's not willing to fully stick his neck out there to make sure the bill can't pass. That's cowardice, and it's unacceptable. Now, are there worse people than Burchett? Sure. But Marjorie is explaining that so much of what we see on Capitol Hill when it comes to the vote, especially when it's so neck and neck, it's only a few votes here, a few votes there. When the oligarchs, when the leaders of the world, the true leaders of the world, or the masters of the universe, if you will, when they want something passed, it gets passed, period. And they want this passed, led by Larry Ellison. Marjorie's got a little bit more to say.
He voted no. The other Republicans only voted no on the second vote, the final passage vote, when they knew that the bill was going to pass, okay? So there's a difference, and that's what you need to understand. There's the two votes. One is the rule vote. The second vote is final passage. And the most courageous vote any member of Congress can take is voting no on the rule. Here's the difference. The rule vote passed 213 to 212. 213 to 212. If those 6 other Republicans had voted no with Thomas Massie on the rule vote, the rule would have failed and the NDAA could not have moved forward to the second final passage vote. However, they voted yes on the rule, allowing it to move forward, and Thomas was the only one that voted no. But when it came to final passage, 6 decided to vote no then because it was safe. You want to know why? Because there were 6 Democrats that were voting yes.
Marjorie, first, I have to say, from one fitness enthusiast to another, you look fantastic. And Jen, that area probably looks pretty familiar to you. Marjorie and Jen actually live pretty close to each other now, which I find very humorous in my own way. But she's right. She's 1,000% correct. And granted, this is coming from somebody who no longer has any votes of consequence that she has to put forth. But think of it this way, and think of the significance of what this actually means. Marjorie is blowing the whistle on what no one beforehand that had ever left Congress is looking to do. And why? Why is it different with Marjorie than it is with just about anybody else or with Thomas Massie? Why is it different? It's different for this reason. Marjorie is at home in Northwest Georgia. She has a family business that she oversees. She is not working on K Street. She is not interested in a career in DC politics outside of legislation. But everybody else is. And this is part of why the criticism towards AOC is as strong as it is, because she's the most popular voice in left politics, if you will. The career comes first. And if the career is predicated on working in the halls of Congress or in the surrounding area of DC, K Street being the most noteworthy, because that's lobbying. That's the lobbying capital of the world for those who don't know what K Street actually is in DC. That's not what Marjorie's doing. So thankfully, somebody finally blew the whistle on the whole fucking shebang. And that's what we've needed. We've needed somebody to step up and say what needed to be said, because all of this is connected. If you think that these votes are not predicated on this idea, this is why we say very often, and we're going to get to Tucker later in the show, your vote is violence if you vote the wrong way. In this case, it's genocidal violence. And that is something that you make a conscious decision to do because your career is more important than your honesty, your integrity, and your humanity. Marjorie, a lot of people may not like you and have differences of opinion on a number of things, but you have proven a worthy public servant, especially in your post-legislative career. You are doing a service that few others would ever have the guts to do. So hats off to you, and we appreciate your service. Now, with that being said, I came across a story that I thought was very interesting. And I don't normally care very much for shit-libbery, which I personally think is a big problem. Maybe the biggest problem in politics based on creatures of comfort, pretending that they actually are trying to help people. They're not. But I do think it's important that people understand the mindset of where, as we call them, the shit libs are coming from and how they look down upon people in MAGA. And that's not to say that MAGA is not guilty, that they don't do bad things, which they certainly do. But I want everyone here to understand the mindset. Where is it coming from? What is that mindset that the person who is affluent, comfortable, probably on the coastlines or in a major liberal city like an Austin or a Denver or a Nashville or a Chicago, this is how they think. This is very important to really get into the psyche of how the liberal hive mind looks at the MAGA mind. Now, I want to be very clear here. There are some truths and there are some untruths. So we're going to go through it, but I want you to listen carefully. The gentleman's name in question, I want to get this right. I want to at least give him his due, because I think if nothing else, you're willing to put yourself out there. You make some solid points. I'll give him that. I will give him that. He did make some solid points. His name is Lucas Bean. Here we go.
Conservatives seem like they're always angry, even though they claim they're winning all the time. These are broken people, and science can prove it. There's a psychological reason for that. Actually, there are 4. Here are the 4 psychological reasons Trump supporters are always so angry. 1. They are filled with fear. Neuroscientist Geraint Rees at University College London studied how conservative and liberal brains process threats differently. Conservative brains have a larger, more reactive amygdala that never shuts off. The amygdala is the fear center of your brain. It processes fear, anxiety, and rage. At the same time, the part of the brain that pumps the brakes on fear, called the anterior cingulate cortex, is smaller in conservative brains. That is a part of the brain that controls proportionality and rational response. Conservative brains run on fear. Liberal brains run on curiosity.
I have listened to my fair share of Trump rally speeches and the doom and gloom that gets espoused by him, especially in what I like to call the revelations part of his speech, which is always at the end. We're totally under fire. The liberals, the Democrats, they're destroying us all. It's really terrible. The whole world is that you have to vote for me. Otherwise, everything is going to end. You're going to lose everything. And on a lot of people, that works. You want to say that there is scientific proof that there is cognitive development differences between those that think with a conservative bend versus a liberal bend? I'd say that's probably fairly true. I'm not going to say it isn't. At the same time, understand the different rhetoric that is thrown at people, that they're constantly being reminded of. And I will say to Lucas Bean, I don't know him. I don't know where he's based. But I live in small town conservative USA. And these are not bad people here. These are all, it's a predominantly white area, for, to be fair. But at the same time, these are law-abiding citizens. They have careers, they have families, they have community get-togethers, things of that nature. And yes, a lot of life is centered around the church, which I do hold highly responsible for a lot of this. As much as we hold the politicians accountable, and should, the evangelical church needs as much scrutiny and needs as much condemnation as anybody. He doesn't mention that, but that does play a big role, especially when education in small town America is not valued the way that religion is. That's a huge part of that cognitive development. It's the same rules that are predicated when companies like the worst of the worst, Walmart, Amazon, they're the biggest because they prey on the simple-minded individuals. That this is what they're going to amount to. This is where they will work. And the cycle repeats itself. And there's many layers to that, obviously. But this is a prime example of just that. So on the one hand, there is some correct points being made. On the other, he's not telling the full story. And that's going to be a pattern that repeats itself.
The amygdala's job is simple: detect threats and freak the fuck out. When the amygdala is oversensitive, everything new feels dangerous. Immigrants moving into your neighborhood, threat. Drag queens on television, threat. A Spanish guy on the Super Bowl stage, threat. Not because there is a threat, but because the amygdala manufactures a threat. Psychologists call this threat hypersensitivity syndrome. This means progressives literally have a more evolved brain, built for complexity, built for modern society.
I know plenty of affluent conservatives. They are highly educated. They are not backwoods illiterates like you would find in places like Arkansas and West Virginia and Tennessee and Mississippi and Alabama. No. They're conservative. They're Christian. They're well-to-do. They just happen to be conservative. So this idea that their brain is different? No. You see, what Mr. Bean here is not doing, which is what he should have done, but as we've often said, this is a class war, nothing more. He's not talking about successful conservatives, of which there are millions throughout this country. He's talking about conservatives that don't have a pot to piss in. And yet at the same time, we want to remind you that there are millions of those so-called conservatives that live in rural America that used to vote for the Democratic Party en masse during the days of FDR up until JFK. And why is that? Why was that? Because that was a time when the party actually represented workers. Those days are long gone. And that's why Bernie Sanders' run in 2016 showed you that a party that adheres to the will of working class ideals can do amazing things. That's not the Democratic Party. That Democratic Party's dead. It's been dead for a while. And they're going to do everything to kill it now that Zoran's contingent is having some success. They will move heaven and earth. They're trying to do it right now in Michigan. I hope they fail. I believe they'll fail. But again, I don't know where this guy falls other than he just doesn't like conservatives. And again, I don't want to completely dismiss what he's saying in that some of it is true, but again, he's not telling the full story.
Conservative brains are stuck in caveman threat detection mode. Perfect for 50,000 years ago. Horrible for modern society. This is why facts do not work on Trump supporters. You're not debating their ideas. You're debating their terrified lizard brains. 2. The psychological root of rage. Psychiatrist James Gilgan at Harvard Medical School spent decades studying the most violent men in American prisons. Underneath every act of rage was one emotion: shame. Gilligan found that men who couldn't process shame turned it outward, into violence, into rage, into destroying anyone who reminded them of what they never became. Most Trump supporters spent their lives falling short of who they thought they would be. They did not build the career they wanted. They did not earn the respect they thought they deserved. They peaked in high school.
See, now this is the musings of a guy who probably got shoved into a few lockers when he was in school. Now, it is entirely possible. I'm not going to say it's not. And guys, smash that like button. We're at almost 600 live viewers already. Having a good night so far. So smash that like button if you haven't and share the stream if you can. I want to remind you that he is already, he is not even juxtaposing between somebody who's incarcerated versus somebody who just happens to be a Trump supporter. See, that's very lowbrow and very poor taste. With that being said, do I think that there are elements of truth in the idea that there are a lot of resentful people that put somebody like Trump on a pedestal? Yes, I actually do agree with him on that one. I think there are a lot of people who are deeply resentful of others. Fear of the unknown has always been the hallmark of disinterest or outright disillusionment with the idea of immigration, even if their family were immigrants. Theirs are better, or this country's too full, or, as I have often pointed out, the real reason is because we are ruled by sociopaths and psychopaths. The reason why we have issues with immigration is because the powers that be do not want anyone to have a living wage. Maximize your shareholder value at the expense of the worker all day, every day. And that is not ideological, because as we've pointed out and will continue to point out, the Publix family is one of the most conservative families in the United States. They are one of the wealthiest families in Florida. They are diehard Republicans. And yet, the business model of Publix is essentially socialism. It's worker co-op, control of the means of production. 80% of the entire Publix corporation is owned and operated by the workers. Ain't that something? But you would never hear him say that. No. It's amazing. And yet, even though I'm not a conservative, it always seems to be that that's where the change comes from. The change always manages to come from people like Thomas Massie and Marjorie Taylor Greene, and not people like Bernie Sanders and AOC. And yet we wonder why people always flock to the Republicans, even if the economic interests are not always in line with what they really need. It's because in America, we like people who want to kick ass and take names. And this is the thing that shitlibs still don't understand. You come off like full-blown pussies. Let's just be nice and gentle about it. Fuck that shit. Can you pay your bills? Can you put any money away? Can you take a vacation? I bet you can't do anything. And so naturally, if the entire system is predicated on this idea that you are doing everything in your capacity to try to live a decent life and you can't, and you have observed this entire system being what it is, Trump is the end game. Because a lot of people have just come to the conclusion, fuck it. He's exposed it for all it's worth. I don't care anymore. You have had ample opportunities to shift, and you don't. There are millions of Trump voters, heck, probably even supporters, that were supporters of Bernie Sanders in 2016. They were supporters of Obama in 2008. Again, inconvenient truths that no one wants to talk about, because in the end, if James Carville was right about one thing, it is the economy, stupid, and it always will be. And our economy is dead. It is shit. It does not work for anyone outside of the top 20%. And even in the top 20%, it doesn't work for probably 10%. For the top 10%, maybe it genuinely works. It's a cracking system. It's breaking, and the floodgates are going to open. So we have to get out of this mindset that it is a left and right, conservative and liberal divide. On certain issues, yes, that's legitimate. But in the end, it's about whether you have anything or you have nothing. And very few have it all. That's the difference.
The gap between who they are and who they thought they would be produce shame, and shame that has nowhere to go becomes rage. This is what you're looking at when you see a Trump supporter lose their mind over immigrants or college graduates. It's not politics. It's a person furious at their own life who needs someone to blame for it. They are mad you did something with your life and they did not. You actually did the work. They convinced themselves that real Americans don't need ambition, that hard work is for the elites. And then they spent 20 years wondering why nothing changed. 3. Massive insecurity. Trump supporters explode the second you challenge them. Online, in person, anywhere. Roy Baumeister at Harvard University published research in 1996 on people who feel superior to others, but are actually deeply insecure because they have no real achievements to justify the feeling of superiority. He called it threatened egotism. People who pretend to feel good about themselves but fall apart the moment someone disagrees. The prison guard who hurts an inmate for talking back. The cop who gets violent because you ask a question. The MAGA guy online who has a full meltdown because you correct his misinformation. Trump did not create these people. He found them.
That is a salient point. Trump is P.T. Barnum, and he figured out how to cultivate a network of people that would live and die for him. But that's because these people have been forgotten. You see, this is also the part that doesn't, make the grade in the statement. I've told the story before. I'll tell it again. I can remember when I went to see Lincoln's tomb in Springfield, Illinois, and I had to fly into St. Louis, and I drove up Interstate 55. And anybody who's ever driven through central Illinois knows that it's basically farm country. That's the essence of the entire state outside of Chicago and Springfield. And so I'm driving up. We might as well have been in Kansas. That's what it looked like. And I'm passing this red barn along the side of the highway. And something caught my eye as I was passing by, middle of nowhere. So probably on the farm, dozens and dozens of acres, maybe hundreds of acres, who knows. But he carved one word into the side of his barn. And the word, as you could guess it, was Trump. So when people are down and out on their luck and they've given up, some people just want to see it all burn to the ground. And this is the thing about, again, it's economics. It could be conservative, it could be liberal, it really doesn't matter. But in this case, it is painfully obvious that the disconnect here is that he's not making it about the fact that these people do not have a pot to piss in. And that is always the greatest sin, because it is always about economics. They think it's because these people, they think it's because they have a difference of opinion about guns, about books, about sexual orientation, about abortion. That's how you keep people divided. Divide and conquer. It's been going on forever. So on the one hand, he's identifying, and again, this is why I wanted you guys to see this, because on the one hand, he's identifying part of the problem. He's not telling the whole truth, because people in his economic position can't tell the truth. You can't tell the real truth as to why this is the way that it is. Do you know why communities in this country thrive and others don't? Yes, there is truth to the Zionist cause. Affluent Jewish communities have the leg up versus working class communities that are white, brown, and black. And where is the connection? Connection's simple. The banking system decides where the money goes and doesn't go. That's why you have redlining, blockbusting, and a whole bunch of other shit that never disappeared, that still exists today. And it affects pretty much everybody who is on those peripheries of maybe, just maybe able to survive, but just can't quite get over the hump. And that's what happens for a lot of these people. They just can't get over the hump. And after decade of the bullshit, they basically harbor a lot of resentment. And listen, are there nasty ass white supremacist sons of bitches in this country who just hate everybody? Yes, there are. And guess what? I don't give a fuck about them because they don't control anything. The Zionists are just as bigoted, just as disgusting, and just as supremacist, and they control everything. You're not going to hear him mention those guys, not for 1 second. But we all know that that's where the problem comes from. It is all economic. It always will be. And no matter what anybody says, if Indiana can vote for Barack Obama, it is always about economics. There are not enough racists in the United States to have that type of an impact. That's why they highlight Oath Keepers marching around DC. I don't care if it's 100. I don't give a fuck if it's 1,000. This is a country of 350 million people. It's the little things that they want you distracted by. It's like the laser pointer with a cat. That's what this is. And that's what they want you to believe is the problem. They never want to say, maybe NAFTA's a bad idea. Maybe normal trade relations with China. Maybe the removal of Glass-Steagall, maybe the Telecom Act, maybe the crime bill. It's all connected. But again, only part of the story being told.
They love him because he never apologizes, never admits he's wrong, and always blames someone else for his problems. To them, that feels like strength. That's what they do in their real lives. It's children having a temper tantrum, and they recognize it because they have temper meltdowns just like Trump does. 4. Parasocial relationship with Trump. Psychologist Henry Teifel at the University of Bristol studied what happens when people have no individual identity and attach themselves to a group or a leader. Teifel called this social identity theory. When their in-group feels threatened, they don't just feel defensive. They feel like their entire existence is under attack. People who already feel like failures, who are filled with shame and humiliation, are the most susceptible. The group becomes their entire sense of self-worth. That's why they fight so ferociously for someone who will never know their name. Trump does not know who they are. He never will know who they are. He doesn't care. But they will burn the country down for him anyway. Because
I don't think that they are under any illusions at this point that Trump loves them. I just think they've accepted the reality that if somebody like Trump can pull it off. Have you noticed something? And I've been pointing this out, and I'm wondering, guys in the audience, if you think it's a salient point or not. I do think there is a distinct difference between Trump's first term and his current term. During his first term, they came after him with everything they had, every day of his entire presidency. And frankly, the only moment that I can recall in which there was a unified appreciation for the commander-in-chief was when he bombed Damascus. That was it. Remember when Van Jones and Fareed Zakaria said that he became the president today? That was the one and only moment that I can recall between 2017 and 2021. Only moment. Today, despite everything that's going on, despite the looting of the Treasury, crimes against humanity, suppressing the Epstein files, being proven to be a sex pest and a pedophile himself, they're doing banquet ceremonies in D.C. last night. All the press corps are all showing up. Do you know why? Because he eventually capitulated. He was always an ogre. He was always a narcissist. He was always a bastard. But he wasn't a capitulator to the extent that he needed to be. And they made him one. And now, you don't hear any talks about impeachment, about getting him out, stopping the crimes. Do you know why? Because now he's playing ball. Now he's doing what he's told. And everything is copacetic. But again, Mr. Bean here is only going to tell you part of that story. Now you understand why millions of people who initially were all on board with Trump have now given up themselves. And that's where the America First movement comes into play. And it cannot be ideological along any of those lines. It has to be workers above all else.
without him, they are nothing. They are delusional. He is not your friend. You will never know Donald Trump. Trump understands this, though. He nursed a parasocial relationship with his followers. He then gave their shame a target. Immigrants, liberals, the deep state. He told them the reason their lives did not work out was not their fault. Why start taking accountability now? It was those other people's fault. So they stopped feeling like losers. They started feeling like they needed to punish people for their shame. The MAGA cult is made up of angry, broken, shame-filled people. This isn't a political movement. It's a toxic support group for adult children.
I can't put a number on the percentage of what I would consider MAGA to be specifically in the category of what he describes. But let's just say it's 20%. Let's say 20%, the 80-20 rule, as they often say. Do I think it's fair to say that 20% of Trump supporters fall into a category that a lot of people would not like or would not generally want to associate with? Yes. You know what percentage of shit libs I would put in the category of people that I would not want to associate with? Pretty much 100%. I know plenty of people in MAGA. But in reality, they are primarily America first. And they are not on board with Israel. They're not on board with the bullshit. But when I listen to the shit libbery, the defense of the Democratic establishment, the defense of centrism, the things that got us here, the things that got us to this boiling point, this boilerplate moment where everything is about to completely spiral out of control. Here's where we are. And the reason we're here, maybe more than any other, is because opportunism knows no bounds in politics, especially when it comes to fellow podcasters. You know, I look at pretty much anybody who's looking at the impact that Shama Sawant is having right now and the importance of this primary election that's coming up on the same day as Abdul El-Sayed's election in Michigan for the Senate. And they are two substantially important elections. One is in the Democratic primary, one is an independent running in a jungle primary. And yet, it seems to me that only Sabby Sabs and RBN are giving Shama's campaign the attention that it deserves, like we are. We are very grateful that Crystal Ball and Ryan Grimm are going to be interviewing Shama on Monday. But that came from pressure from the likes of all of us, those that are not part of shit-lib Democratic Party politics. But you know who is a part of it? You know who does speak ill of Ilhan? You know who is a raving lunatic of a Zionist? Like Little Ben. It's somebody who I haven't covered in a while, but if you're looking for the person in politics that has as punchable a face as Ben Shapiro, it's David Pakman.
Democratic Party is showing the early signs of the same disease that destroyed the Republican Party. I've got so many friends on the left texting me and saying, David, we're not going to allow the same thing to happen on the left that Trump did to MAGA, that Trump and MAGA did to Republicans, are we?
You don't have any friends. So you're already lying about my friends on the left. Whatever the definition that Pakman came up with for what is considered the left, I don't want to know it. Because it's definitely not what the thinking person would do. And yes, Phil, shout out to Katie Halper, friend of the show, somebody I love. I think the world of Katie. I think she does an amazing job, and she just had Shama on. Yes, thank you, Chi. You see, when I haven't talked about him in a while, it just kind of comes back to me. David A. Pakman. We'll continue.
Republicans, back in 2010, their leaders laughed at the Tea Party. Conspiracy theorists, they're far-right internet trolls, they're not going to do anything. And then the Tea Party took over local organizations, threatened primaries, built their own media universe, and eventually were part of a process that gave us Donald Trump. The left and Democrats can't make the same mistake. There is a small group of far-left extremists gaining influence inside youth groups and party organizations because they spend all day online organizing and enforcing ideological purity and attacking anyone who disagrees.
What in the fuck do you do every day? You know, I remember when I first heard this nerdlinger talk back in 2016. He is somebody who I would rather watch paint dry for entertainment than listened to. You see, true left populists like personality. They don't like drones. They don't just want to hear talking points. That's what comfortable liberals in the suburbs and urban dwellings, that's what they want to hear. They just want to be reminded of what it is that makes them comfortable. And Pakman serves that up on a silver platter. And as you can see, based on where he lives, which is in the Boston suburbs, and it appears to be a very comfortable home that he's living in, he's made himself quite a bit of money with his operation. He wasn't making that money when he was talking about working class ideals. But once he figured out how to get the money from the shit libs, he was in, baby, all the way. So when he talks like this, he's talking like this left-wing extremists because he's trying to protect his gravy train. That's his only objective. So I hope that most of you can see through this.
Now, let me be very clear. I am not talking about people who want Medicare for all and affordable housing. I want all that stuff. I'm with all that stuff. I'm a social democrat in the style of Northern Europe. Of course I want those things.
You only want them so long as it doesn't affect your bottom line, which is why you will never, ever push for it the way that a channel with your reach would possibly be able to do. This is why, even though I'm not a fan of Hassan Piker, I'll take him over your scumbag ass any day of the week and twice on Sunday. And I hope everybody else would agree, because at least somebody like Piker has the courage of his convictions. It's not about personality here. It's about legitimacy. And Pakman has no legitimacy as far as I'm concerned.
These are folks who treat political warfare like a full-time job. And when they can't build their own coalition, they attach themselves to popular causes. They take real concerns about healthcare, housing, police misconduct, and use them to sell what is actually an authoritarian worldview. Now, there are things in DSA, for example, Democratic Socialists of America, that are good and that I agree with. But there's also some stuff in there that I think doesn't make any sense. I saw their new platform promises a country where you have no debt, you pay no rent, no mortgage, you receive publicly funded housing, publicly funded retirement, food, education, energy, medicine, transportation. And it sounds incredible because it is incredible. How would they create it? Government ownership of the largest corporations and of entire industries, universal rent control, abolishing police and prisons and abolishing the Senate and replacing our political system. Some of these ideas are reasonable to a degree. For example, I support universal health care, and I've talked about 4 or 5 ways that we could get to it. I want affordable housing, and I've done a dozen interviews with housing experts on what would and wouldn't work to get us there. I support progressive taxation. We need to collect more taxes from the very rich. Voting rights have been hurt in this country.
Now, of course, I don't watch this dumbass, but I am willing to bet that he probably has not said anything critical of Governor Newsom eliminating the billionaire tax in California. Probably hasn't said a word about that. Now, when it comes to housing, we all know why housing is not affordable. It is not built to be affordable. It is built for profit. It has always kind of been that way. And a lot of cities don't want it. A lot of suburban areas don't want it. You try putting affordable housing, apartments in wealthy suburban areas, liberal or conservative, doesn't matter. You see just how far the wealthy in those communities will fight to make sure that the housing there is not affordable. Kind of like where you live, Mr. Pakman. You see, the thing about David Pakman is that he lives a very affluent life. See, he doesn't want the riffraff in his backyard. It's somebody else's problem. You know, kind of like those that support fracking. but they'll never want a fracking well in their backyard. It's somebody else's problem. Same with the data centers, like Mr. Wonderful, Kevin O'Leary. He would never have that data center anywhere near his property. It's somebody else's problem. And this is exactly how Pakman is talking. It's somebody else's problem, not his. When capitalism breaks, this is what you get. And he is going to protect his investment, which is his podcast. It's all he's got. He doesn't have anything else. He couldn't possibly. He's too much of a dour personality to do anything else.
We need police reform. So there's elements of this that are great, and any social democrat like me will tell you we got to do that. But you bundle it together, and this fantasy in which capitalism, private industry, and major parts of the government simply disappear, most Americans don't want that. Most Americans understand that there is no way that you could impose that without extraordinary authoritarianism. My one hesitation about confronting this now, and why I went back and forth, is the midterms. Publicly exposing the rot could make moderate voters think the entire Democratic Party has been infected. But I don't think silence is really going to hide it. I saw a crazy thing from the weekend where there was a college Democrats convention, which I was actually invited to participate in, and I couldn't make it.
Actually, he wanted to go, and they told him to kick rocks. That's what my source told me. My source, who I trust wholeheartedly, said that Pakman was clamoring to go to the college Democrats convention, but they said, "We're not interested, David. You might feel a little bit better at the senior caucus. It's probably more your speed, more your audience."
Hassan Piker was dressed like Mao, and I guess Destiny tried to show up, and he was banned from entering allegedly because the Mao-dressed Piker didn't want him there. Republicans are going to put these clips everywhere. Like, people seem crazy when they see this stuff, and they are going to abolish the police and abolish borders and abolish prisons and play them on a loop for 6 months. If I were an average voter with no knowledge of these online personalities, which most of these people are, most people don't follow this sort of thing. They're busy living their lives and working and doing all this stuff. If I were an average,
which is what gives you carte blanche to just lie your ass off to them because they don't know any better. Am I right, David?
Average voter with no knowledge of these online personalities, I would find these images and a lot of this stuff very alarming. So as I said last week, and so many of you agreed with me, Democrats must act now and intelligently. The centrists don't really do anything, make very milquetoast fringe suggestions that you don't even really push for. Not working, okay? This other thing of like end everything, it's a sort of destructive accelerationism, that's also not going to work. So I think that what we need here are no apologetics for dictatorship, no apologetics for authoritarianism, no harassment, no anti-Semitism, no allowing online factions to decide which liberals may enter the room. You know, what would I even have been allowed at that college Democrats thing? They invited me months ago.
I seriously want somebody from the college Democrats to say, "No, David, we didn't invite you. We didn't want you there. You came up with an excuse to make it seem like you were the person that they wanted." No, nobody cares. And I'll be the first to say, I am not a supporter of Hassan Piker. I am not a supporter of Mao Zedong or Joseph Stalin. But you, as much as anybody in so-called left politics, are why we're descending into fascism. Your career and your well-paying income is your priority. I am willing to bet my bottom dollar that you have not said a single fucking word about Shama Sawant other than to denigrate her if you've even gone there. Have you said anything about Adam Smith co-authoring the merging of the U.S. and Israeli military bill? The moment I knew David Pakman was a bastard was when he advocated for regime change in Venezuela in 2017. Then he supported the war in Ukraine, and he is supporting Israel as we speak. And you'd be surprised what percentage of the Democratic Party is in line with him. It's a lot bigger than you think. But as we've said, this is all based on class. And he believes himself to be of the elite class. He isn't, but he is one of those people. And you don't even have to mention that he's Jewish. Everyone knows he's a Jew. He's a fucking Zionist, and he's very proud of it. But he's a liberal Zionist. So, you know, he does it politely. While another 1,000 Palestinian children are maimed and murdered. But hey, that's a fancy house in a fancy neighborhood that he lives in. And that ain't cheap. It costs a lot of blood, money.
I don't know. I mean, I couldn't go, so we didn't find out. So we just need normal people to participate, join local committees, attend conventions, get involved with state parties, and let's turn the DNC into something that works. Many reasonable people doing a little can defeat both the centrist do-nothings and the hardcore extremists who would get nothing done. Republicans believed they were going to control the extremists. They were like, we got these people under control. The extremists took over the party. Democrats can still prevent that outcome, but we've got to get them to get things under control right now. I've said before, I've never been a Democrat. I don't care about the Democratic Party beyond who offers the better candidates, and usually it's Democrats over Republicans. But we've got to make sure that we don't allow that party, if it is the vessel, at least for now, to something better than what Republicans are offering, to be hijacked. This is about let's include, but not allow any extreme faction to take over. And that is what I think makes the most sense. Can it be done reasonably and without self-inflicted damage between now and the midterms? I don't know. I hope so.
Now you can rest assured that Pakman does not support Mamdani or anything that he's doing, because the line in the sand is whether or not you support Israel. That is a line he will not cross. He is he is a Zionist. Forget saying liberal Zionist. He's just a Zionist, period. That is what he is. And I don't know why you're throwing up comments like that. I am trying to make a point here about why the idea that you're going to break through this force field within the Democratic Party is a near impossible lift. It doesn't mean you can't elect people within the Democratic Party, but the party itself, like the people that are going to get amped up about supporting AOC, for example, or even Ro Khanna for that matter, for president in 28, the guardrails will be there. The superdelegates are not going away. Corporate special interests are not going away. And Zionism is not going away. Not for the elites. If the party has proven one thing, the elites have moved on, and they will decide one way or the other, where is the more favorable balance going to come from? And that's who will win. No, I am not going to subject you to Laura Loomer and Randy Fine. We'll get to that in a minute. But this is a very popular channel, not because I think he does anything to deserve it. It's because he's in the club. When you're in the club and you do what you're told, you can make a lot of money. You can have a lot of influence. And he also knows exactly what to say. He knows where his bread is buttered. And in the end, that is all that matters to him. He paints a much softer picture, a more palatable picture of what Zionism and its death march across society. And let's be very clear here. The desperation to continue perpetuating this nonsensical message about Zionism, corporatism, neoliberalism, it's a dying dog. It's not dying fast enough because too many people vote out of fear, as was described with Lucas Bean. But the desperation that, let's say, Ukraine has to go through in order to have Loomer interview President Zelensky. I mean, we know he's a puppet anyway, and she's looking for a paycheck, of which she gets plenty. But if there's anybody that should be of great concern, because, you know, we've covered Jonathan Pollard, we've covered the lengths that the shit libs will go to protect their empire, the neocons, and what they will do. But Jonathan Pollard was a spy, and he went to federal prison. He should have been there until his dying day. Frankly, he should have been hung. You know, you come me all wrong. It's the wrong tone. If you want walking, I'll give you walking, stalking, chalking, fun. I hope you're enjoying this live stream. Where else would you want to be on a Saturday but right here, having a good time? I hope you're all having a good time, because now you're really going to pay for it. You see, you got me upset, and I get angry. I have to make a decision. And how do I torture you further? Here's how I torture you further.
Get why people are confused and upset. It feels like things are stalemated, that they're getting broader and more difficult. Why? Well, because what the American people want is victory. There's this bizarre notion in foreign policy that the American people are deeply worried about the immediate cost of war to the enemy. That the American people, that we can't handle the ugliness of war for even a day. That every conflict has to be totally antiseptic. And here I'm...
Antiseptic? That's the word you go with, you dumb fuck? Anybody who supports war, and I do mean any war, should have to fight in it. And I always find it interesting. You see, that's why we love Palestinian News Network. That guy is kicking ass and taking names on Capitol Hill. And he confronted a Zionist recently and asked him, do you support the war in Iran? He said, yeah, absolutely, I do. So you're going to go fight in it? And he got very offended by it. Well, little Ben's got a little bit more to say about this.
not even talking about the American willingness to undergo casualties. No one in America wants American casualties. It's a tragedy and a horror. We do understand that war does come along with casualties, and we are willing to undergo those casualties in pursuit of an end and a victory for America.
Who in the fuck are you talking to? Honest to God. If there could be a citizen's arrest, and I've said, I know where he lives. I mean, listen, do I know where he lives technically? It's probably not hard to find. But as I've said, he lives in Boca Raton. Yes, it is as stereotypical as you could possibly imagine. He lives in a wealthy, gated, affluent Zionist Jewish community in Boca Raton. Now, with that being said, I do believe a citizen's arrest would be lovely. This is a warmonger. This is a death rattler. He does it in a different way than his doppelganger David A. Pakman does, but little Ben Shapiro does it his own way. And you know what those two lady boys have in common? They got no nuts. They're still searching for him. That's why his voice is all the way down here. It's trying to get to puberty, but it can't quite get there. He's trying to get over the top, which is why I'm convinced that he probably does paste that shit on his face. It's not even real. Or as somebody had put the joke out, maybe he's like a chia pet. Maybe it's all fertilizer. Puts it on, puts the water on, and then it starts to grow. Someday, you might be a real boy, Benny boy. Maybe. Maybe.
But as far as the idea that, for example, America, we can't hit Kharg Island because the Iranian people would then be deprived of oil resources. The American people are, I should say, not particularly concerned about that. We are far more concerned with why we're there not winning. I think what we actually ought to do is say an eye for everything. Like you touch a ship in the Strait of Hormuz and we kill the head of the IRGC, we kill Khalibaf, we kill your entire leadership class. Again, we destroy South Pars and we destroy Kharg. One drone and that's what happens. That is the way you win in the Middle East. By the way, that's the way you win generally.
Yeah, he's a regular military commander. This guy knows exactly what needs to be done. I know what needs to be done to him. And even though I can't be in his presence, I know enough, as we all do, that if given the opportunity, we would all like to do this to little Ben. Now, I do wonder who listens to him and thinks, yeah, this is exactly what we need. I would be curious to know what his age demographic, average age, actually is. But this is the danger in what you want to call it MAGA. You want to say that the split is between MAGA or MIGA, which is really what it is, and America First. I think that that distinction has a difference. And I do think, what do you call Christopher Walken sitting in a chair? Christopher sitting. I like running. I like swimming. I like climbing. And I like posturing. It's fun. Not nearly as fun as Russian roulette. But you take your chances. You win some, you lose some. Some lose everything, including their head. Now, if you think he's bad, and he's bad, I want to remind you all that I used to work with Sid Rosenberg many years ago when I was at WFAN. It was my first internship when I was in college. And he and I got along fine. You know, we talked. You know, he is the way he is. Then I learned a lot about him personally. And obviously he was somebody that I really wouldn't want much to do with. And this is genuinely an overcompensator if there ever was one. And you'll understand why.
It's inevitable that President Trump is going to have to do what he doesn't want to do, which is go in there with this massive all-out attack. There's no other way to stop this. There's no other way to win this war. So, again, he's trying to do the best he can. He's a very nice man. I love President Trump. He doesn't want people to die. He really doesn't. Okay, he's a nice man. But there's no other way to end this. Once you start this, Midnight Hammer was great. Epic Fury was great. Once you start this, there needs to be a finish. And the only finish is complete surrender by the Iranians. I hate to say it, but complete annihilation.
Cocks his head to the side. He's very happy, proud of what he has to say. Here's what I can tell you about Sid Rosenberg. Sidney Arthur Rosenberg. What can I tell you about him? Well, he's definitely somebody who likes to party. Yes, Saul Good is absolutely right. He's very Miami. Used to live in South Florida. Now he lives in New York. He's been a fixture on radio and TV for, I guess it's about 30 years now. He's been doing it a long time. But this is a guy who also fancies himself as, a wise guy. And he hangs around with wise guys. So he naturally thinks he's one of them. He probably has never met a drug he doesn't like. I'm not going to get personal. I'm not going to, let's just say, everything that you think that this guy's about, he's about it. This is a guy who is, well, yeah, I mean, I guess that's one way of describing him. But he's a very proud Zionist Jew from Boca Raton. He's another one, another Boca Raton. This is what is kind of mass produced in that part of the United States. Thankfully, I don't live there. I lived in Delray Beach, one town over. So I ran into those types a lot. I did. Guys, we're at almost 700. Let's get over that mark. Let's hit that like button. Let's share this stream. Really appreciate you. Sid Rosenberg is somebody who is the most dangerous because he's very enamored with the idea of being relevant. Because in reality, he's a narcissistic 2-type personality. He's a fraud. He doesn't have any agency. He holds no currency. All he is a blowhard. And there's a lot of others that I've dealt with in, the media sphere over the years, but he's particularly evil because of how hard he has pushed Zionism and Israel, the devastation of the Palestinians and the Lebanese, and now the Iranians. People like this are overcompensating, whether it's because he feels the need to take PEDs, whether it's because he feels the need to tan himself like he's from the Caribbean, but he isn't. He's a very angry man. Now, when Lucas Bean, who earlier was talking about this type of MAGA or MIGA supporter, yes, Sid Rosenberg would be an example. Because unlike little Ben Shapiro, who wouldn't know a gym if it smacked him in his face like a punching bag would, it's a speed bag, by the way. Sid Rosenberg is a gym rat. He is hefty. And he thinks he's a tough guy. And he, in many ways, is the embodiment of exactly what the worst elements of MIGA represent. I don't know about that. I can't speak to that. I know he loves women. We'll leave it at that. But he fancies himself as a man about town, which is why he's half-heartedly joking about running for office like Michael Rappaport is joking about running for office. I would just love to see them do it just for the humiliation. Sid Rosenberg is also somebody who talks about assassinating Mamdani. He's one of those guys. So this should come as no surprise that he just gleefully talks about violence with no repercussion because he's chosen. We'll continue.
Well, we talked last time about this. And by the way, I agree. I love President Trump. I love his heart, I think, is really for peace. And he's always, I love that even now, this past week, he's still talking about peace and wanting to find and leaving that door open for negotiations. You say the only end is annihilation. Now, what if winning this war requires boots on the ground? I asked you that last time. That's not very popular with the American people. What is your response to that?
It's not popular with me either. Look, I'm not a parent of an Army person,
right.
A Marine person, so I'm very sensitive to that. Trust me. But look, we have the Army, we have the Marines for a reason. They're not there to shake your hand at the airport, Rachel. Okay? They're there for a reason. Last I checked, we don't have a draft in this country. So these courageous men and women know exactly what they're signing up for.
Actually, no, Sidney Arthur Rosenberg, typical Zionist Jew who would never put on a uniform to defend this country because he believes he's above the average person. He believes he's above everybody because, again, he's chosen. Here's what you have to understand about serving in the U.S. military. And I came very close to doing it, very close. There is a thing called a conscientious objector. When you are defending this country against enemies, both foreign and domestic, you are doing it with full knowledge of the circumstances of which you are being called in to do. What is being asked, potentially, and Jen and I are already of the mind that it's already been done and is being done. When you are asking our servicemen and women to go into enemy territory in terrain that we do not understand, that we have never been through, that isn't just being protected by the Iranian military. It's being backed by China. It's being backed by Russia, possibly even Turkey, definitely the Lebanese. They're walking into an ambush. They're going to be mass murdered. This isn't a war that can be won on the ground. You thought Iraq was devastating? You thought Afghanistan was devastating? That's a walk in the park compared to what this will be, and probably already is. Little Ben talking about Karg Island. We're going to take Karg Island. Why don't you try to take it? Your life is not worth more than theirs. In fact, their life is worth more than yours because they actually produce something of value. They are guardians at the gate. You are a fucking blowhard with a microphone, and Sid Rosenberg is an even bigger one. Look, this is what they sign up for. Everyone's tough until shit gets real. And the second shit gets real, then you find out who the real tough guys are. And Sid Rosenberg, for all his boasting and blowharded attitude, is not that tough. Because he'd shit his pants if he ever stared down the barrel of a fucking gun. And he knows it. That's why he's overcompensating. Kudos to this lady for pushing back on him. I don't know her name. I don't really care. It's fucking Fox News, faux news. But pushback is appreciated here.
This is war. We don't want to see anybody die, but this is war. A war that started 47 years ago that they started. So, yes, I know that the moral ground is to say, I don't want our kids.
We overthrew their democratically elected government in 1953. We did it. That's when it started. You lying fuck.
To die. I feel the same way. But we got to win. Now, we can win maybe without putting boots on the ground. Maybe we can. I don't know. I'm not Jack Keane. I don't have that type of information. If we can do that, great. But if at some point it requires putting some boots on the ground to win this war, that's why they signed up. To fight for this country, to fight.
That is not why they signed up, you son of a bitch. Most people sign up for the military because it's their only way out of the hell that they're living in. If you sign up for the armed forces, there's a lot of benefits that come with it. There's a salary, there's a housing stipend, there's travel, job opportunities, healthcare, education. This is how they get you in a lot of different parts of the country. It is true. If you are desperate and you're trying to survive in this world, you can join the military. And chances are, it's one of the ways to get out of a bad predicament financially, socially, etc. So when you say that the reason that somebody signs up for the military is to go fight in a war that they will likely die in, armed combat is the last line of defense in the military. Now, obviously, a lot of things have changed since 9/11. We know that. Nobody spewed more bullshit about 9/11 than this guy. And how do I know? Because I used to listen to him on the radio. He's either on WOR or WABC, AM radio in New York, speaking to the most conservative Zionist living on the North Shore of Long Island or in Southern Connecticut or North Jersey or Staten Island. That's who he preaches to. And you know what those areas have in common? Not a lot of military members. So it's easy. It's easy to appeal to that crowd. It's always acceptable from the chosen's perspective to spill the blood of other innocents for their comfort.
For President Trump and to rid the world of evil animals like the Iranian regime.
Can I just ask, what does victory look like to you? Are you serious? You really want just until they're annihilated and there's a regime change? Is that final for you?
That's it. I mean, look, I want to get the dust. I want to open the strait. All that's important. But if you leave these animals in power, you are destined. Look, what is the definition of insanity? Do the same thing over and over and again, expect different results. If you leave the IRGC in power, we're going to have the same issues in 5 years, in 10 years when the great President Trump, is gone. So we have no choice at this point but to go in there. And yes, regime change. I know it's two dirty words. That's part of winning the war ultimately. Yes.
The loudest supporters of war are always those that will never have to fight in it themselves. And that's the problem. And that's been the problem for a long time. And this is also what conscientious objection comes from. You know, I always said, if we were faced with actual turmoil here at home and we had to defend our land, would I fight? Yes. That was the biggest reason that I was in the precipice of actually dropping out of college and joining the military when I was 18, because it was right after 9/11. Now, obviously, in retrospect, I made the right decision, knowing what I know now. However, if this was a world in which that actually existed, if there was a Red Dawn situation that actually existed here in the United States, that would be a different story. We appreciate your service, brother. And your story is one of many stories that are out there about why people get into the service in the first place. This fuck wants you to believe that people join the military because they have a death wish. That's the reason you think people join. With Ben Shapiro, the overcompensation comes from a lack of masculinity. In Sid Rosenberg's case, he may instill an image of masculinity because of his enhanced muscles. But in reality, he's just as big a coward as Shapiro is. And damn them all for being able to get away with this. But hopefully, and this is the end game for their ideology, eventually they will not be able to get away with this. The tables will eventually turn, and we will win the day. But let's conclude this segment on a positive note, because I finally figured out why Ben Shapiro looks the way he does.
The new pet. Chia. Chia Pet, the pottery that grows. It's fun and easy.
If you ask me, that's the only explanation. Chia. And there are a lot of guilty parties, a lot of them. There are a lot of people out there that don't get their comeuppance the way that they should. But that's what we do. You know, I do feel that when we do this show, that there is some catharsis, because the importance of the community, the importance of what we try to do here on this channel. And guys, again, if you haven't smashed that like button, please make sure that you do. We were just over 700 live viewers for the first time in a while. But I got to tell you, it is very reassuring to know that we are all awake. We are all aware of how bad things are getting. And while we can't solve the problems that we want to solve at the ballot box, we can accept the reality that elections do have consequences, but only if it's an election for those that actually are fighting on behalf of the citizenry. Those elections have consequences. Those are the elections that are important and should be to everybody. But a lot of the problems that we face, this doesn't happen at the ballot box. And this is why the importance of understanding why we're faced with the data centers, spy cams. You can't vote your way out of that. They'll just bribe the elected officials at the county commission level or at the state level or in yes, the federal level, we know that's bought off there. But there's an interesting element to the flock camera situation that I think a lot of us are very concerned about. Our independence, our freedom. We already know we're being watched like hawks, A, through the use of tech that we have today. But there's also something to be said for the infiltration that comes with whether it is the reconciliation, the coordination, whatever is going to be between the U.S. and the Israeli military. The only reason they need it in legislation is because they want to make it official. You think this shit isn't going on already? We know it is. I want to give a big shout out to friend of the show, James Lee, who again has been doing amazing work on this topic. But I want people to understand that the change that is supposedly, there you go. And those stories are going to start popping up all over the place because, as it turns out, Flock is getting hell, but there's a reason for that. There is a coordinated effort to take Flock out, not because they want to stop surveilling on us. It's because, well, Israel wants to do it for us. And that's where Axon comes in.
Thank you. After months of debate, the city of Syracuse's Flock license plate reader cameras, they're all now gone. But News Channel 9's Victoria Kellogg says while one system is out, another is apparently taking its place.
While these cameras, all 13 of them, have only been gone for a few days, the effort to remove them started months ago. 5th District Councilor Jimmy Monto says that push has paid off.
We're happy that those 13 are gone. I would be happier if Flock had no cameras at all in the city or the county or anywhere around here. But for now, I'm happy that they're off city property.
And the change goes beyond this intersection. City Hall now says that all Flock cameras in the city of Syracuse are now gone following months of debate over privacy and data sharing.
A simple Google search kind of tells you what the problems are with Flock or where we are seeing problems with their actions, especially around new Americans and immigrants and the tracking of humans.
The city didn't walk away from cameras. It changed who will provide them, approving a switch to Axon, another license plate recognition system that Syracuse police says is important for investigating homicides and other crimes.
We are going to watch very carefully to make sure that people's rights, people that are just walking around the city of Syracuse, driving around the city, going to a grocery store, that they know what's happening when their face is scanned, when their license plate is scanned.
Monto says once the Axon cameras are deployed, the real test for him is just the beginning.
No, the real test is whether or not we have a constitutional republic anymore, and the answer is no, we do not. Our civil liberties are gone. everything is being infiltrated. And this is why we say that revolution or bust is the only solution. And again, this is a key word that is being used by friend of the show, James Lee, as well. Revolution or bust. The flock cameras are being removed, but Axon cameras are being put in replace of them. And why? Not just because the Trumps are invested, but because this is an Israel-backed technology. You didn't think we weren't going to talk about Israel tonight, did you? Now we are. So this is the beauty of it. And we'll finish this one out, and a very important one to follow.
To make sure we're using the tools where we can use them, but use them correctly. There has to be guardrails.
Using technology without losing the public's trust.
You've already lost it!
News Channel.
You've already lost it. It's gone. It's been gone a long time, and you're never getting it back. You think this is the end? This is the beginning. This just gets worse. And the reason they're doing it is because they know the citizens are uprising. The citizen uprising is happening in real time. As much as they try to surveil, as much as they try to bring us down, more and more people are uniting around a common cause. How do we get the fuck out of this? It's pretty clear what needs to be done. And I got to tell you, as much as people didn't necessarily want to live in a world where certain crimes went unsolved because things weren't being caught or criminals were being released on technicalities in court, because again, violation of civil liberties, which is all of what these mastermind psychopaths like Alex Karp and Peter Thiel want to deal with, which is, again, if you've never seen the movie Minority Report with Tom Cruise, see that. That was way ahead of its time. But very often, these films are not ahead of their time. They're just letting you know what's coming down the road because it's already there. On the one hand, you get rid of Flock, but then you get Axon. James Lee, you're up.
Flock thing is almost certainly a deep state psyop. And I got all the receipts.
You know, one of the content creators for the administration, basically a binder guy, an Epstein binder guy, all of a sudden saying the flock cameras are wrong. And then you did a deep dive and you found out something really interesting.
I've found pretty much like at least half a dozen cities that have canceled flock, but then signed up for another surveillance system.
So it turns out that Syracuse was just pulling a sleight of hand. They were telling you that we are doing away with flock. That's nice, but we're going to bring Axon in now. They just lie. Like any politician. Lips move, they lie. That's their job. Which makes one wonder how the hell I could ever be a politician, because I can't lie. I just can't. First of all, I suck at it. So there would be no point. I'd be wasting my time. Everyone would see through me. I don't know how people live with themselves. I really don't. I don't get it. But this could not be more obvious. There had to have been some type of coordinated effort because too many people in corporate media were talking about the flock cameras. It's one thing if it was just circulating with independent media spheres like ours. But no, there had to be a reason. And now we know why.
Axon.
Except who has ownership in this company?
Well, turns out Trump. Earlier this year, he bought $5 million worth of stock in Axon.
And it was a really great investment, one of the best investments I've ever made. Believe me when I tell you, we're going to make a lot of money, great money, incredible amounts of money. You watch.
The minions of President Trump going out now against flock. And meanwhile, Americans don't realize they're just being replaced with a different surveillance system where Trump is getting some royalties on the side.
Now there's reporting that this guy has come out with, Tony Ortiz, saying that he's spoken to at least 2 influencers that have been approached about getting paid to post negatively about flock.
So there you go.
Then I looked into the investors. So Flock is invested by Andreessen Horowitz. That's Mark Andreessen, part of the Silicon Valley technocratic elite. Founders Fund, that's Peter Thiel's group, as well as Y Combinator, that is the group that Sam Altman used to run. And if you look at Axon, Axon is a publicly traded company. So that's old school, that's banker.
And there it is. And this is also one of the great failures. You know, I always said, my favorite line from when Bernie Sanders ran for president in 2016 was, he said I was dangerous, and he's right. I am dangerous for Wall Street. But the most important line that he delivered on a debate stage when he was running for president in 2016 was that Wall Street's business model is fraud. And at the time, people were like, holy shit, did he really say that? Did he really say that the economic anchor of the US economy is fraud? Yes, very much so. And this is exactly why publicly traded companies are the most are of the greatest risk of creating all types of financial criminal behavior. Because in the end, it's about shareholder value. It's not about business viability. There are plenty of companies that are not worth shit. This is why we always, again, like I said, I like to try to connect as many stories as possible. This is why little Ben Shapiro is trying to boost the value as we speak of the Daily Wire, because he's hoping some sucker will come in and buy him out. That's a pump and dump scheme if there ever was one.
Finance money. So their top shareholders are BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street.
Right.
It's like, why are they pushing anti-flap? Oh, is it because potentially they want to steer these city contracts towards Axon?
100%.
Is that a possibility? I have
Yes.
one more thing to share.
Yeah.
This is the headline. Epstein could have made $100 million on a secret police tech investment. Former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak helped convicted sex trafficker quietly invest $1 million into a police tech startup in 2015. So Axon just bought last year the company that Epstein founded back.
I mean, you can't make this up. Like, this is pretty disgusting. But that's what it comes down to. There's no morality here. It doesn't matter what Epstein did. If they can use something that he was involved in to make more money, they will. In full-blown capitalism, there is no morality. It's all about winning by any means necessary. They say in socialism, everything's good until you run out of other people's money. In capitalism, everything's good until you run out of people to exploit.
In 2015 called Carbon. So now you have the tie of Epstein and the Israelis involved with this Axon company.
And Trump.
Versus
yes, and don't forget me.
But the thing is, people aren't paying attention because everything is like anti-flock, de-flock. We need to get rid of these flock cameras. But they're quietly putting up these Axon cameras in replacement, and they're tied to Israel, Jeffrey Epstein, Donald Trump, BlackRock, Vanguard.
So that's the point.
That's the point.
It doesn't really matter what evil group is behind it. We need to make sure that we're knocking down all surveillance cameras.
They'll call us terrorists. They'll say that what we're doing is evil. They will do everything in their capacity to try to convince us that our efforts are wrong. And this is why you probably saw recently that Trump gave his speech about, you're just going to have to accept the data centers. They're really great. They're going to provide a lot of jobs and a lot of big tax breaks. Again, very tiny audience that he's talking to. Definitely not the audience that is the average everyday person. And frankly, they don't care about anything like this. How could they? They don't have time. Life is hard enough as it is. So that's why when we say that you can't vote your way out of this, this is why. This is why this insane levels of evil have been bestowed upon us for far too long. And it isn't necessarily because we're complacent to what's going on. It's because in a failing system like capitalism is here in the United States, there is a reason why we're failing. Because again, everyone has been exploited. Well, with overwhelming majority. And after a while, you just basically give up on the system. And then you start looking around for people that speak truth to power. You look around for people that are, frankly, traitors to their class. That is the essence of why I am appreciating, to a very large extent, what Tucker Carlson is doing. He has real power. He has real influence. I do believe he is intelligence. And I also believe that he has a lot of guts. And I also believe he's protected. Now, on the other side, and again, I'm only doing this not because I like Stephen A. Smith. In fact, I can't stand him, as most of you know. However, he did have Tucker Carlson on his show, which is kind of amazing that Tucker would subject himself to this. But I want you to see what happens in real time when somebody who is so desperate to be relevant in politics, because all he is a talking head, a blowhard of the worst kind of a talking head, who meets somebody who actually knows what the fuck he's talking about.
Whether anyone agrees or disagrees with you, I think, especially me sitting here talking to you, I really, really appreciate the fact that you're willing to tackle any issue, and I'm thankful for that. So thank you for the conversation. Let me ask you this, just a few more questions before I let you go. I'm thinking about the Nick Fuentes interview, for example, and I wanted to transition a little bit to this because, you know, I'm wondering about where the line is between exposing extremism and normalizing it when you have somebody like him that you had on your show. I remember people were criticizing you. I didn't watch the interview. I saw, clips of it, but I didn't watch the whole interview in its entirety. And I remember people accusing you of being quite soft on him, even though I can't imagine you being that guy. But that's what they were accusing you of. And they were saying stuff like that. But we know some of the things that people have felt he said and some of the positions that he has taken. From a generic perspective, extremism compared to normalization, where does Tucker Carlson draw that line in the sand, particularly considering the position that you're in now and the kind of influence you wield?
I think it's really important not to normalize extremism and to call it out by name and to say, to just frame this correctly, like what you're saying is crazy and extreme. I think it's super important to say that because otherwise it's like, oh no, this is normal. And I think one of the most extreme human beings I've ever met in my entire life was Lindsey Graham. And I would say maybe the second most extreme I've ever met is Ted Cruz, both U.S. senators. Lindsey Graham unfortunately passed away recently. Ted Cruz still represents Texas. These are people who have called for murdering innocents at scale, bombing people who did nothing wrong, killing kids, and have done that for like decades, who have openly called for the U.S. government and American citizens to be more loyal to a foreign country than to their own, who have called for banning Americans' right to criticize a foreign country, eliminating free speech on behalf of a foreign nation. You can criticize your own country, totally fine. You're not allowed to criticize a foreign country. That's so crazy that I can hardly believe it's happening. And nobody said.
When I see Tucker Carlson, when I see Marjorie Taylor Greene, when I see Thomas Massie going after cleaning up their house, if you will, in a way that you just do not see in left politics, it's deeply disturbing. There are plenty of Democratic senators that maybe don't give the ick factor, quite like Lindsey Graham and Ted Cruz, but you better believe that when it comes to, let's just say, Chuck Schumer and John Fetterman, they're just as evil. They may not have been around as long, but you're not going to hear anybody. I didn't hear anybody in the Democratic Party establishment truly go after the sick son of a bitch that is Governor Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania. This is a guy who not only openly supports Israel, full stop, but likes to sign bombs while he's at it for both Ukraine and Israel. I never heard anybody of the stature of Tucker Carlson go after him the way that he's going after Ted Cruz and Lindsey Graham. Why is that? Why is that the reliance so very often has to come from what is considered the conservative side? Why is it that they always seem to understand that when push comes to shove, you have to fight? And that's why I think a lot of people are attracted to their, not necessarily ideology, but the silence of the Dems. It's like I said earlier. You all who, I'm sure there's plenty of political aficionados that are in the chat this evening. We've had an amazingly sizable crowd tonight, which is great. We're very, very grateful for all of you that have been here. But I want to keep something in mind here, very important. No one is willing to get out of line if it means that it's going to affect their career, especially in the Democratic side. On the Republican side, we see it all the time. We see the courage of the conviction. And I don't like Nick Fuentes. I understand why people follow him. We've pointed that out many a times before. But kudos to Tucker for sidestepping the bullshit question out of Stephen A's mouth and redirected it, as a savvy Politico would do, to something that's more tangible and more important. But you wait and see how Stephen A reacts to this.
So you'll go and you'll interview Lindsey Graham, or I interviewed Ted Cruz last year, and people are like, oh, no one is like, I can't believe you're sitting with that wacko extremist Ted Cruz, who's literally called for murdering people. And by the way, has helped murder people. He's a United States Senator. He's not a podcaster. He votes for things. He appropriates money. That guy has blood on his hands, the blood of countless innocents, but it's totally cool to sit with him. How does that work? I don't understand. Not one person has ever said, I can't believe you sat across from Ted Cruz. He's a murderer, which is true. But because we're so
you're calling the Senate. You're calling a senator.
Brainwashed.
Hold on, Tucker. These are political officials you have known, just like you've known Trump. You've known a lot of guys on Capitol Hill. You've interviewed a lot of them. You've talked to a lot of them. You used to be on Fox News, which is a top-rated show at 8 p.m. after you succeeded Bill O'Reilly.
You are such a hack. Why does anybody like Stephen A. Smith? I've been asking that question for 25 years.
Talk to these folks all the time. And now here you are on this show. You're calling them a murder. You're calling a guy like Senator Ted Cruz a murderer.
Well, it's true. Ted Cruz is calling for the killing of innocents and funding it. And so what I'm actually calling for is not...
I mean, do you see the look on Stephen A's face? He looks like he's gonna explode. Not because he's angry, but because, oh my God, what have I done? Why did I bring this guy on my show? I'm just trying to be part of the establishment. I don't need this kind of pressure. I don't need this trouble. Help, get him off. I can't kick him off. That's gonna look really bad. Tucker, please stop talking about how much you think Ted Cruz is a genocidal war criminal. It's really not good for the brand I'm trying to build here.
Calling out poor Ted Cruz, who's suffering, is already living in hell. And I'm not even mad at Ted Cruz. I want to awaken people to a real moral framework. So you have people who say ugly things, and great, that happens everywhere. I'm against saying ugly things. I try not to. I try not to do that. But
you just did. That's a very ugly thing to say, Tucker. I mean, to call a senator, it's an ugly thing to say, Tucker.
How much of a fucking Uncle Tom can you possibly be? How desperate are you to be relevant? Ted Cruz is possibly the biggest slime bag in all of Congress. He's a whore in the truest sense. You give him the money, he does what he's told, and he has supported everything regarding foreign wars, genocide, conflict, you name it. He has talked about his support of Israel like nobody's business. And yet, you want to get on Tucker Carlson because you don't like him referring to Ted Cruz as a war criminal? He is a war criminal. Did Ted Cruz sign bombs? I think he did. So, are you suggesting that if somebody signs the bomb, which is basically giving them the feeling of, I'm the one pressing the red button to drop them on innocent children, that's a mass murderer? And yet you're up here debating language. You're up here defending Ted Cruz against Tucker Carlson. Yeah, that's a really bad look, Stephen A. I've always hated your shtick. I always thought you were a joke. I don't know who in the hell actually thought that anything you said was of any amount of value, because it isn't. You're a massive shit talker, including to somebody who I very much admire, which is Jaylen Brown, who is a Muslim and fully supports the state of Palestine, not Israel. And you shit on that guy who was a finals MVP, mind you. And the only reason that you do this is because you want to stay in that club. You want to be relevant. You want to continue to have everyone giving you the business. I know this is going to be hard for people to hear. I am not kidding when I say this, but evidently Stephen A. Smith makes $10 million a year. Now, in this broken economic system that we live in, nothing surprises me anymore. But that one kind of does, because I still don't know who wants to hear him. He is nails on a chalkboard. And this is when he's talking about sports. When he's talking about politics, he's a bigger dumbass than Laura Loomer. And that's really saying something. But you're coming to the defense of Ted Cruz. And this son of a bitch thinks he's running for office one day. That's the funnier thing. That's been floated many times. And if there's one thing we know about sports media, when they float stories, it's because they want them out there. That's how LeBron James conducts business. This is how Stephen A. conducts business. His protection racket, he thinks it'll serve him well. Who is your audience, sir? What are your ideological bends and leans? I don't know anything about you. I just know you're a blowhard. Maybe the biggest I've ever seen. And unfortunately, it pays well. And that's why he does it. And there is going to be somebody who is going to pat him on the back for defending Ted Cruz. Yeah, you can't let him say that about Ted Cruz. That's just wrong. That's just wrong. Not good. Not good. Not good. That's why they all talk glowingly about Reagan. Well, they certainly love me, and I did a lot of bad things, but because I'm a doting old man, they certainly appreciate me. No. There's a reason why I can get away with hell, because I'm a charming old bastard. Screw you, Stephen A. We'll finish it up.
First of all, I don't, because he is a senator, it actually matters. It's not ugly, it's a fact. Ted Cruz has called for killing innocents. He's done it to me many, many, many times. We'll just bomb them. Just bomb the whole city. Just blow them up. What? There are people, thousands, millions of people who live there who did nothing wrong. They have no role in this.
Ms. Cooey, I have to say, even though I did not intend to stop this video, I love your profile picture.
They have no role in a nuclear program. They're just going to work. They're little kids. That's crazy. That is extremist behavior. And he has the power to make it happen. He's a U.S. senator. So, by the way, we should get back in the media into the habit of criticizing the powerful. And I know everyone's upset about some 27-year-old gay kid, Nick Fuentes. Ooh, he says naughty things. Yeah, I agree, whatever. But who cares? What we should care about is when powerful people misuse their power to hurt the innocent. And Ted Cruz is doing that. And so are a lot of other senators. So I'm just waiting for someone to call me and be like, I can't believe you platformed Ted Cruz. I can't believe, how do you live with this? Do you sleep at night? I mean, did you shake his hand? The hand of someone who called for the murder of innocents? I can't believe you can live with yourself. I'm waiting for that moment. It'll never come because everyone's so freaking brainwashed that they think that whatever that little gay kid is.
And again, who gives a shit about whether or not Nick Fuentes is gay? I just know that Nick Fuentes is an incel and a very unhappy, angry, disturbed young man. Stephen A. Smith, like I said, as Jen likes to say, dance bojangles, they want to pay you money to make you think that this is the way. There's no community in the United States that would benefit more than the poor when it comes to something like single-payer health care. And a significant portion of the Black community is poor. And a significant portion of that community could benefit from somebody like Stephen A., who many of them trust, to say single-payer. But he never will. Because the career is more important. And this is a theme we have been touching on all night long. The career and the money is worth the blood. As the old saying goes, is the juice worth the squeeze? Apparently for Stephen A. it is. You know that old meme of Dave Chappelle from the Chappelle Show when it's the skit when he's getting married to Oprah. And he's clinging to the dollar bills. Like, oh no, I ain't letting these bad boys go. I have a feeling that Stephen A. does that quite a bit. He's got to hang on to those bills real tight. Because God forbid he lets them go. What's he going to do then? It's not like he has a lot of talent. Now, if you want to talk about somebody who, in my opinion, has a lot of talent and has been doing the work that needs to be done, I must say, I appreciate Candace Owens for a lot of different reasons, not the least of which is having a relentless pursuit of justice for Charlie Kirk. And I've been saying this for a while, and I'll say it now. The reason that I believe that Candace is fighting the way she's fighting is because she already knows what really went on. She already knows the truth. She already knows who killed Charlie. She knows why. But she is a careerist. She is a podcaster. She does very well, and she knows how to stretch it out. But let me tell you, watching the scum suckers at TPUSA stand with their dicks in the wind because they know that she's got the goods. Like I said, they got an incredible infusion of cash after Charlie's assassination. But it was only going to last so long. The same is true for Erica Kirk. The same is true for Blake Neff. Same is true for Tyler Boyer. Same is true for Andrew Colbert and everybody else involved. This is a grift that they're going to try to exploit for as long as they can before everything is over. Now, the problem is that they apparently have the Justice Department backing them up. But we all know why. We know how we got here. But the Israel connection is very real. And that is what Candace has done a masterclass at for a very long time. She has shown the direct connections between Israel and Turning Point USA. She has also, to her credit, shown exactly the level of infiltration led by little Ben Shapiro has actually had on the impact of the organization. Now, again, I got no love for Turning Point USA. I've been to a couple of their events. I see what they're about. They're about cultivating the youth into their organization to become good voting members of the Republican Party. But that's what it became. That's not what Charlie had set out to make the organization. The organization, when it first got started, was very much a libertarian-like organization. It was a youth version of, you want to say the John Birch Society? Fine. And not as hardened and as evil just yet in their youth. They may evolve into it. I always saw Charlie's talent. I always knew he had it. He wasn't my cup of tea. But again, you don't hate the player, you hate the game. He played it well, did very well. But eventually he woke up and he realized what he was in the middle of. And when that happened, he didn't realize that he had already made his deal with the devil. And he didn't know what to do to get out of it, which is why the text messages, which has become an inflection point in many ways that has been talked about at great length over the past couple of days, particularly between Candace and Andrew Colvett. Colvett said, produce the records, produce the texts. Candace says, here's your texts. No, not those. You are revealing personal information. Somebody pointed out that one of the great hallmarks of keeping a person's memory alive is their writings. Could be books, could be letters. And in the modern age, it's text messages. It's a way of keeping somebody's memory alive. Like my friend Amanda Coleman. I remember we texted 3 days before she died. And I still remember when I got the call. She went to the hospital and she didn't come out. And I look at it every once in a while. Just a reminder of what a good friend she was. And her husband, Jason, and my good friend, Jocelyn, and we would get together and go out and watch football. It is important to keep these memories alive. Charlie Kirk mattered to people on a personal level in a very profound way. There's the public image of Charlie, and then there's the actual Charlie Kirk. His family, his kids, his closest friends. He is being used as a prop for the Zionist cause. In death, mind you. And as Candace has shown, you will not use my friend's name in vain. Here we go.
The last face-to-face conversation that I had with Tyler, we were backstage at AmFest.
I want to, Jen, stop putting that stuff up, please. Okay? I'm not going to say it again.
And I was telling him that Charlie should just debate Nick Fuentes. There was some Groyper stuff going on as usual at these events in the hallways. And I was like, just sit down and just have the debate. I think it's just worth having it. And he told me that Turning Point USA was never not going to be pro-Israel. They would always be pro-Israel. In retrospect, that's a weird thing to say, especially a weird thing to consider since its founder was quite literally going against Israel.
And that really is all that it comes down to. The idea that there were conversations happening while Charlie was alive with people at the very top specifically saying, we will always be pro-Israel and that's it. So who's really in control? Who's really making the decisions here? And that's what's so wrong about this. There are too many obvious examples that whatever is being sold, whatever we're being told is the reason why he was killed, it's bullshit. He was killed because Turning Point USA was a front and is a front for the Zionist cause, and Charlie didn't want that to be happening anymore, and they killed him as a result. It's really that simple. We harp on this and will not stop harping on this until justice is done and the Zio state is dismantled from our daily lives. That includes our State Department and what likely will be revolution.
Last month's that Charlie Kirk wrote explicitly.
You know, I suggested Charlie debate Nick as far back as 2021 just to kind of, you know, brush that under the rug. I felt like Charlie could think. Charlie was never in the chat. It was Andrew Colvett and Tyler and their gang of managers who were like, no, we're not gonna know Nick, and you know, we're gonna actually decide who Charlie reaches out to. Yeah, it's on my Twitter. I can send it to you. And
so you don't think never got to Charlie that
I don't know. Well, the thing is, Charlie also was not even like engaging with Nick at the time because he was a troll, and that was the whole thing. And so my whole thing was like, bro, if you think he's a troll and you think his ideas are this bad, debate him and end the argument once and for all. And also your video will break the internet because Tyler himself said we should debate, you know, high followed trolls. And I was like, oh, perfect. Let's debate Nick then. And we'll have this first episode. It'll be a banger. We'll end him once and for all. And we can kind of put this to rest. And they were just like, no, Nick.
The Zionist cause. He said he was going to be forced to leave the pro-Israel cause. It's completely understandable that employees at Turning Point would ask leadership, well, what direction are we going to go in on this Israel issue? Was Tyler Boyer ever asked that explicitly? And what was his answer?
Specifically, Tyler Boyer, I would say, so my friend, when she was in his office, said to him, you know, what is it that you have? Why are you so against Candace Owens, the Israel cause, etc.? She's brave. She's bold. She'll ask Tyler Boyer right to his face because she wants to know what is the big deal about not supporting Israel. That's when he shut the door, pulled her in, and said, listen, I'm a Zionist. Candace Owens is a Black conservative who wants to be relevant in this movement. And she's doing whatever she can at all costs to stay relevant.
For those of you who've been following the show, Stu Peters and I have had a conversation on here before. We'll probably talk again at some point. And I don't know this Mitch guy, but I certainly appreciate what he's talking about. I appreciate what all of them are talking about because, again, I believe this story holds the key to the Zionist infiltration in many respects. They have a much stronger foothold in the GOP than they do in the Democratic Party. However, this is a long way from being over. And maybe the Tyler Robinson trial is a show trial and he will get convicted and they'll say it's an open and shut case. But even if that happens, no one with a thinking brain is going to believe it. We're seeing through the propaganda too easily now. And that, in so many ways, is the real problem. I think in many instances, they have convinced themselves that we can't see it, but we can. They're also convinced that we're not going to do anything about it, but we will.
So that, to me, says a lot. That is proof, and it's in the text that I sent you to, Stu, of where she confirmed, like, yes, you know, he pulled me into his office and said that to me.
So in the wake of Charlie's death, Boyer, seemingly almost proud and outspoken that he was a Zionist to the core, and that he and Erica would not be continuing the anti-Zionism path that Charlie was planning on heading down. I mean, correct. This kind of brazenness in claiming that he's a proud Zionist, it reminds me of Erica Kirk's Shabbat Shalom, Daddy's Home comment on the Fox News channel while she was wearing an Israeli flag pin.
Charlie wanted out. Erica was more than happy to pick up the mantle, which also goes to show you that whatever that marriage was, well, considering Erica's intelligence ties to her parents, maybe it was a honeypot situation from jump. In Politico, how Candace Owens became TPUSA's worst enemy. In an age of conspiratism, some believe the truth is whatever gets the most views. Less than 1 month after Charlie Kirk's death, Candace Owens made an incendiary claim. Kirk came to her in a dream and told her he had been betrayed. Owens, a conservative podcaster, worked for TPUSA from 2017 to 2019, had taken it upon herself to investigate Kirk's death, homing in on potential betrayers. On her popular podcast, she denied that Tyler Robinson, the troubled 23-year-old from Utah, who was standing trial for allegedly murdering Kirk, had acted alone. She suggested Israel somehow played a role. And she said former colleagues at Turning Point, including his wife, Erica Kirk, should face scrutiny. Colin, what I want you to do, because this is a long article, if you can scroll down, and I'll let you know when to hold it. Keep going. I'll tell you when. That speed's fine. Keep going. It's going to be when the next header comes up. There it is. In an age of conspiratism, some believe the truth is whatever gets the most views. If you are looking for a way to gather an audience or to build clout on the internet, one way to do that is to post a lot of provocative or shocking content, and conspiracy theories can certainly fill that void, said Matt Hanna, an associate professor of digital studies at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. The most dramatic conspiracy theories prey on a natural psychological bias. Big events, we assume, should have big, dramatic causes. A lone gunman or a random virus mutation just doesn't feel like satisfactory explanations, said Catherine Agnayonova, an associate professor at Rutgers, my alma mater, who studies misinformation. Oh, Rutgers has a misinformation course now? That's sweet. People find it easier to believe that powerful social groups are secretly orchestrating events. Yeah, they are. The theories gain widespread appeal, and independent creators who peddle them find fame and fortune. Agnayonova's research found that within a week of the attempted assassination of Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania, 2024, between 1/4 and 1/3 of Americans found conspiracies about the event, that it was planned by Democratic operatives, or that it was staged to be plausible. The share was even higher among strong partisans, regardless of party affiliation. Let me tell you, there's one thing Jen has been very adamant about, is that Butler was a complete setup. On the Charlie Kirk Show, official responses to Owens and other allegations have become frequent programming. There is a cost for free speech, and the cost is that sometimes stupid people say stupid things, Andrew Colvin said. But hopefully courage and wisdom, prudence will rush in and fill the void, so it's not just one side winning the day. The number of Turning Point's on-campus chapters exploded after Kirk's death, thanks in part to some red states facilitating high school chapters from around 2,000 and 6,000. But at campus chapters across the country, leaders found themselves having to refute Owens' theories. It's really frustrating, said Nathan Lutz, who founded a TPUSA chapter at his high school in Trumbull County, Ohio. The only problem that I have with Candace Owens is she says a lot of stuff, but really just says it and doesn't have the stuff to support it. Oh, really, Nathan Lutz? Is that so? That's cute. Owens has caused a lot of pain among students, said Arizona University professor Owen Anderson, who serves as advisor to the campus group that sits in the backyard of TPUSA's headquarters. He has seen a major influx of interest in since Kirk's death, but Owens' conspiracies have led to security concerns among the student leaders, some of who feel unsafe. Yeah, we've heard that quite a bit, haven't we? If she had some proof, people would listen. We have plenty of proof. What are you talking about? It's like they get their fucking marching orders and they say, this is what you'll say to the media if they ask you questions. But then when it turns into, hey, I think she's just attacking a widow, it gets kind of disgusting. She's not just attacking a widow. She's getting to the bottom of the bullshit, which is what our job is. That's why we do the channel that we do. And while this isn't something that we cover all the time, when something comes up that's relevant, We'll address it because it's all connected. At AmFest in December, TPUSA's premier winter conference, conservative commentator Little Ben Shapiro called out Owens by name. Erica Kirk and TP never should have been put in a position to have to defend themselves against such spacious and evil attacks, particularly in a time of mourning. Eventually, Erica Kirk agreed to meet with Owens. Erica would like me to stop lying, and I would like to honor that. I can only honor that if Erica is more explicit in terms of what I've lied about. Kirk obliged, and the two met privately in early December in an undisclosed location. Erica, in a brief tweet, called it a productive conversation. Owens said at a 4.5-hour meeting and debriefed in a subsequent podcast episode. During the meeting, Erica, another Turning Point staffer, went point to point through Owens' allegations and contradicted her public statements, according to the TPUSA staffer who moved into a rental property. That staffer was briefly on the meeting with Owens. Every morning I wake up to a new headline lying about me. I don't know. I've seen enough about Erica Kirk to know that she's got a very checkered past because her story changes constantly and her career moves change constantly. And when I see that, it should be highly suspicious, as it should be to anybody else. Keep scrolling, Colin, please. In January, TPUSA served Owens a cease and desist letter, suggesting that she had violated a non-disparagement agreement she signed when she left TPUSA years earlier. I'm sure there is some truth to that, but overall, I'm sure it's all BS. Most of it is BS anyway. Keep scrolling, Colin. Keep scrolling. In May, Charlie Kirk's former bodyguard filed a defamation suit, but the TPUSA organization itself has taken no further legal action, resigning itself to combating Owens' accusations during episodes of the Charlie Kirk show. This is one of the reasons we don't want to play whack-a-mole with this stuff, because like every day, it's something new. Then I and the organization or Erica is alleged or plotting. Colvin said during a May 15 episode, it's so outlandish that I don't even know where to begin. You know what? We're going to hold it there. Here's what we know for sure. If Candace Owens was lying about what she was saying, if she was deliberately committing libel, slander, anything that can be proven false, especially in a court of law, it would have been done already. But that hasn't happened. And the reason I believe it hasn't happened is because they're running out of real estate. They're running out of places to go to convince people that this story is just made up. It's a hoax. It's not real. What we know is that the walls will continue to close in on all of this. And we will cover it because it, again, links everything back to the Zio state and what TPUSA was being used for, why Ben Shapiro through the Daily Wire gave $1 million to the organization, and why Tyler Boyer made the statement he made, and Andrew Colvin made the statement that he made. Everything is interconnected to Israel. That is what this organization is built on, and it will not change. Too much money invested in getting these things up to the pace that they need to be at. It's a money laundering organization. It was a voting machine organization, getting people to support the cause. I mean, listen, Charlie Kirk probably is responsible as anybody for getting Trump elected in 24. That operation is dead now. They'll have some success, but nothing close to what they once did. Because the collapse of the Zio state is commencing as we speak. So hats off to Candace. Hats off to Stu Peters. Hats off to anybody else who's standing on business for the truth, not just for Charlie. Charlie is merely a symbol of the greater reason. It is the dismantlement of the Zio state at the expense of the American people. If we don't do that, we subject ourselves to even greater harm as a nation as we continue to spiral History has shown we're on borrowed time. But we will fight for a better future because it can happen. But a revolution is the only way it will. I want to thank you all. I hope you all enjoyed the show this evening. This was a long one, but a good one. There were actually a few more stories that we didn't even get to. But with that being said, please consider going over to patreon.com/revolutionary change. For as little as $5 a month, you can become a supporter of our small but mighty, despite heavily suppressed, it's still growing channel. We just passed 129,000 subscribers. So we thank you all for being a part of this. Make sure that you are subscribed. Make sure that you click that bell so that you are given a reminder when we do go live. And also make sure that you're subscribed over on Rumble. Rumble, that is Revolutionary Change. We are also on Substack at Revolutionary Change. We are also on Instagram and TikTok. Revolutionary Change. Let's give a big shout out to our super chatters for this evening. We've got a lot. Let's roll them. Pirate Justin with the $2. Shabbat Shalom. Fuck Zionism. Fuck Israel. Not daddy's home? Appreciate you, pal. Libertarian Social Dem with the $1.99. Peter will lay the smackdown on Pakman. I hope I lived up to the expectations. Libertarian Social Dem with the $4.99. The Zios push for gun control on U.S. But they are the most armed and get gun owning privileges in anti-2A places in California and New York. I wouldn't doubt it for a second. Libertarian Social Dem with the $4.99 again. Among those 6, the voted of non-NDA, non-counting Massey. Tim Burchett can still be worked on by Team Massey. Chip Roy and Paulina Luna are Zios. Yes, I would agree. Christian Zios at that, of which there are many more. Maybe not as effective, as influential, but the number of Christian Zios, pretty sizable. Jeanette Villalona, thank you for the $2. I'm getting so tired of people being cowards. Aren't we all? Aren't we all? Teresa with the $2. Conservatives feared same-sex marriage. Yeah, I think part of the reason they did is because a lot of conservatives are actually in the closet. Jeanette with the $2 again. We need people that fight and don't hide. Hey, it's cost me a lot by being willing to fight. Alex Scott Mittens. Being nice and gentle doesn't bring food to my table. Couldn't have said it better. Sean Hammer, good to see you, pal, with the $5. The level of tyranny a nation will be subjected to is the level it will tolerate. From General Washington. Amen. Libertarian Social Dem with the $4.99. If the left Dems be moderate immigration, ditch gun control, and anti-white people and wokeness, they may win states like West Virginia, Indiana, Florida, Ohio, North Carolina, etc. Again, identity politics is used as a weapon against ever having to address economic policies for the working class. Ozma, love you, sister. Thank you so much for the $49.99. All one has to remember is the shitlib hysterics of the Biden administration when Jon Stewart returned and they were rallying hashtags out of fear he'd criticize Biden on his show during a genocide. That's cultish behavior. By the way, great job, Pete. Thank you for your incredible support. Jim Talib, always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you for the $5. It has become a routine, and we appreciate it. Libertarian Social Dem with the $4.99. Ron Paul and libertarians are pro-free trade, anti-tariff, etc., but are anti-trade agreement like NAFTA because they are not true free trade, but managed trade. Yes, and trade is a big part of this, hence why the tariffs are such a disaster for many. Jeanette Villalona with the $2 again. Projection is the powerful's defense. I agree. And one more time with the $2. I'm late to the game, but when did he sell out? I don't know who you're referring to in that instance, so I can't speak to that, but thank you for the support. Alex Scott Mittens with the $2. Smash that like button, guys. If you haven't done it, we obviously really appreciate it. It really does make a difference. And the other thing I also want to say that apparently helps out a great deal is there is this feature now that apparently is helping boost the channel especially when we are getting hammered by the algorithm. Hyping a video helps a great deal. So if you haven't hyped our clips, and I'm not sure if the live stream is part of this or not, but I know for the clips they are. So if you haven't hyped a clip, please make sure that you do. Smash that like button, leave a comment, share if you can. All that effort makes a huge difference in being able to break through. We really appreciate it. Cursory Nursery with the 199. Thanks, Peter. Not D versus R. It's normies versus uniparty. We agree. Appreciate you, my friend. 0744 Pete with the $10. If only you were the master, the Sling Blade impression, Billy Bob Thornton, I just may vault you to the top of my favorite Sage YouTube soon-to-be stars. Okay, I have a confession to make. I have never seen Sling Blade. I used to date a girl who used to call me Sling Blade. This is way back in the day. I know Sling Blade came out in like the late 90s, early 2000s. I still have not seen it, but now you are motivating me to actually see it. So I will. I am Thor with the 199. Thank you so much for your support. And why not do it twice? Thank you very much. And 0744 Pete with the $7. Interesting. There has never been a time where truth has been more important. It is our duty to seek that truth. I appreciate your contribution to that endeavor. I appreciate your contribution to our channel. Carson Cruz with the $10. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Carson. And Saucy Spice with the $9.99. Tucker's statements hold true for most of Congress. Smith's reactions are ridiculous. Are you going to do a show on the Palestinian American Sama kidnapped by Israel? Keep up the good work. Thank you very much for making mention of that. I'm going to write it down for Monday. Sama is not real. At least it shouldn't be anyway. Thank you very much. And Libertarian Social Dem with a 199. TPUSA, Breitbart, Newsmax, Fox News are Zio. Yes. And so is MSDNC and CNN. Libertarian Social Dem with the 499. Thank God Tucker is more influential than Glenn Beck, because Tucker, like MTG, has humanity unlike Glenn Beck, and his Zio-funded blaze is pure evil. Again, Tucker is very wealthy. He doesn't need this. He's doing it because he chooses to. So getting all of that extra money, again, he's worth at least $300 million. What is the point? Maybe he feels penance, whatever it is. I appreciate the fact that he's doing what he's doing. Citizen Pendejo with the 20 pesos. Great to see you, pal. Politico thinks they matter. Bless their hearts. And finally, Hot Dog with the $5. The squirrels came early this morning, ate all the peanuts, threw the shells all over, and haven't returned all day. Thoughts? They're very cute when they're chomping down, you know? That's what they do. We certainly hope that you enjoyed it. This was definitely a show that I felt very good about tonight. I think I did a decent job. I think I can walk away from tonight's show and say that we did a good job. So I hope you all liked it. So one more time, if you would, smash that like button, share, subscribe, do all those things we ask you to do. We love you all. We appreciate you all. We will see you Monday. And free Palestine. Good night, guys.